Well, of course, back in the late 20s and the 30s, you drew from, the theater in terms of your composers. You drew from the theater in America. Well, there were so many of these people who obviously came from Europe. And certainly the Steiners and the Korngolds and the Waxmans and what have you. What Alfred Newman obviously was American, and they were but it would have been logical at that time because these people, were as composers, in New York of shows and operettas and what have you, they were European because that was the way it was at that time. But it doesn't mean that it was exclusively that way. But it would have been logical to draw from these people. And I think that, that the different people were coming out at the same time. Now, Steiner certainly was in the forefront, but, Al Newman was there doing his street scene in 1931, so forth. So it's not as though Steiner was an island, but everybody was evolving in their particular way. But Steiner, I think, led the parade with regard to music throughout the film versus just in certain special instances in addition to the main title and the closing title. I mean, he was an advocate, and with the support of certainly David O. Selznick and Marion C. Cooper. Hey, music under dialogue, why should that be a problem? And indeed it wasn't, but it was thought to be a problem before that.
You're also a specialist of Korngold. What was Korngold's biggest contribution to the music of Hollywood, do you think?
Well, Korngold, of course, when he came over at the request of Max Reinhardt to do Midsummer Night's Dream on the film, he had never done a film before, and he was not, saying, I want to be a film composer. But he did it for Max Reinhardt, and of course it wasn't his score, it was the Mendelssohn music for Midsummer Night's Dream. But he learned very quickly because he had to not only do pre-recordings, and do things with the actors that would be in tempo with certain things, but also the score recording afterwards. And he embellished the Mendelssohn music with other Mendelssohn tunes to flesh out the whole movie. And also, I think that he was the one, and I don't think I know, who upgraded the Warner, because once again, it was a dance band before the setup. They were doing the musicals and so forth and not doing much for the dramatic films. So he's bringing in all these people, who are concert musicians or theater musicians and, radio, but this very eclectic group of people to augment the others for this scoring that they're doing because they're doing symphonic scoring. And I think we can be grateful to him because as a result of that, the whole music department at Warner Brothers upgraded. And of course that meant that it wasn't just for that one film, but it was going to be for various films because they were now getting into a different mode. This was not the early Depression, the 31, 2, 3, 4. This was kind of a revitalized, so now we've got not only Captain Blood's and the Charge of the Light Brigades and the Adventures of Robin Hood and these big pictures that they realized needed big music support. So it was now par for the course. It wasn't like an experiment. So I think that made a big difference. And also the philosophy of Warner Brothers became the music is foreground. Now this was not always the case. Now at Metro-Goldwyn, I'm speaking now of obviously the background music, not the people singing. But at Metro-Goldwyn, it was one of the elements, but it wasn't in the foreground. Sometimes you'd listen to an MGM score of the 30s, and you were going, what? And Fox was sort of in the middle, They had, but Warner Brothers, you couldn't help but hear the music, but it never interfered with the dialogue, which is most important, because if it had interfered with the dialogue, you'd be in big trouble, because it was supportive, but supportive in a more, in a broader sense than would be, and of course, so you could hear these two, but it wasn't meant to interfere with and fight. It just was meant that they liked to keep that music level higher.